Have you ever stopped to think about why money never seems to stay in your hands, even though you work so hard? Pedro, a hard-working man, faces this dilemma. He starts each month with hope, but by the time it ends, he's back in the red. He doesn't spend on luxury, but there's always an irresistible offer, an unexpected bill, and there goes his entire salary. Like many of us, Pedro thinks the problem is that he doesn't earn enough. But in reality, the secret he doesn't know lies in financial wisdom. And that Pedro has a friend, João, who is also not rich, but lives with peace of mind. João always has money saved and never panics when unexpected things happen. Pedro wonders what João does differently. The answer, João says, is in a simple verse from Proverbs 21:20. In the house of the wise are stores of choice food and oil, but a foolish man devours all he has. João knows something Pedro hasn't learned yet. Pedro's story is about to change, and yours can too. The Bible offers practical principles that transform lives, and João is going to teach Pedro how to apply that wisdom. In the next episode, we'll see how this simple biblical lesson has the power to lift anyone from financial frustration to freedom. So stay with me, because the secret to prosperity is not about earning more, but about managing. Pedro was trapped in a cycle of frustration. Every month, he started with good intentions, promising himself that this time would be different, that he would save. But as the days went by, irresistible offers came up, unexpected bills arrived, and before he knew it, his salary had evaporated. The end of the month was always a moment of anxiety. Pedro didn't understand why he never seemed to have enough money. He didn't live in luxury, didn't spend on extravagant things, yet his bank balance was always zero. He began to believe that he would never achieve financial stability, thinking the problem was how much he earned, when in reality the problem was how he managed it. João, his longtime friend, lived very differently. He didn't earn much more than Pedro, but always seemed at peace with his finances. João had the habit of saving a portion of his income, and when unexpected expenses arose, he was prepared. Pedro always wondered how João managed this. He saw his friend as someone lucky, someone who didn't seem to worry about money. One day, in a conversation, Pedro asked João what he did differently. That's when João revealed his secret, something that would change how Pedro viewed his finances and perhaps his entire life. Pedro, João said, it's not luck, nor do I earn much more than you. The difference lies in how I manage what I have. The Bible gives us powerful advice in Proverbs 21:20. In the house of the wise are stores of choice food and oil, but a foolish man devours all he has. This verse speaks of wisdom and management. While the fool spends everything without thinking about the future, the wise always saves a portion for times of need. That was a shock to Pedro. He had never thought about finances this way. Did the Bible really speak about money so practically? João continued explaining how he applied that verse in his daily life. He set aside a portion of his salary at the beginning of each month and saved it. It's not just about saving, it's about creating the habit of being prepared, João said. Many people live on the edge, hoping the next month will be different. But if you don't change the way you manage what you have, everything will stay the same. Pedro began to realize that to change his financial situation, he needed to change how he viewed money. He understood that the problem wasn't how much he earned, but how he was spending it. Determined to do things differently, Pedro asked João for help in applying this biblical principle. João helped him create a simple plan. The first thing Pedro had to do was write down all his expenses. Every cent that left his account needed to be recorded. You need to know where your money is going before you can control it, João said. In the first few days, Pedro was surprised by how many small purchases he was making without realizing it. Coffee, snacks, things that seemed insignificant but added up to a considerable amount by the end of the month. Over time, Pedro became more aware of his spending. He learned to distinguish between what was necessary and what was superfluous. The food and oil stored in the Bible are a metaphor, João explained. It's not just about literal food, but about having resources saved, whether money, energy, or time. It's about having the wisdom to think about tomorrow. Pedro began to realize that his old habits were full of little foolish decisions. He always thought about today without considering future consequences. As the months went by, Pedro noticed significant changes. For the first time, he was able to reach the end of the month with some money saved. The feeling of peace and control that brought him was something he had never experienced before. He no longer felt anxious when an unexpected expense came up, because now he had an emergency fund. Jerome was right. When applied, biblical wisdom really made a difference. What started as a simple savings habit was now transforming his entire financial life. Pedro continued to learn from Jerome. Wisdom isn't just about money, Jerome said in one of their conversations. It's about how you live your life in general. When you start applying these principles in one area, you soon realize they expand into other areas too. Pedro began to see changes in his attitude, in the way he made decisions, and even in his confidence. He now knew he wasn't a victim of circumstances, but could control his finances and plan for the future. Jerome, seeing Pedro's transformation, felt proud of his friend. He reminded Pedro that this was just the beginning. Now that you've learned to manage what you have, you can start thinking about investing in something bigger. Think of ways to make your money work for you. This was an idea that had never crossed Pedro's mind. To him, money had always been something that slipped through his fingers. But now, with the wisdom he had gained, he began to understand that money, when well managed, could be a powerful tool. In the end, Pedro didn't just change his financial life, he became a more confident and conscious person. He was no longer a slave to money, and his anxiety about the future had disappeared. Jerome's advice, based on Proverbs, had completely transformed him. Now Pedro was prepared for any crisis, any unexpected situation, because he knew that wisdom lay in saving and planning. He finally understood that true prosperity begins with wisdom, and that wisdom was available to anyone who chose to follow it.